Here at Louisville Metro Government, our administration is working every day to make our city safer. We're getting ready to approach the one-year mark of our administration, and I'm so excited about where we're headed. We recently released a draft of our economic plan that will drive us into the future. Last month, we released our affordable housing plan strategy, and we're working to make those plans a reality every day. It's all part of our work to make Louisville a safer, stronger, and healthier city. And one thing that we're here to talk about today is our work specifically related to public safety and the need to reduce the amount of gun violence. This is something that we have been focused on since day one, and we will not lose focus on this issue. This is an absolute top priority for our city government. There are steps that need to be taken at the state and the federal level to help us reduce the amount of gun violence in Louisville. But we're not waiting for those changes to happen. We're taking action right here in our city. There are steps that we can take, and so we are. Like this year already, we've established the LMPD Non-Fatal Shooting Squad. We've expanded our deflection program, invested more in our group violence intervention department, and the new program that we're here to talk about today that we'll be announcing. In order to reduce gun violence in our city, it's important that we understand everything we can about how gun violence happens, why it happens, and where it happens. And that's why I'm so proud today to announce the launch of the Louisville Gun Violence Dashboard. It's live online right now. The dashboard will be permanently housed on our city's website at louisvilleky.gov under the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods homepage. The purpose of the Louisville Gun Violence Dashboard is to expand our government's transparency, better inform the public and the news media, and to create opportunities for collaboration among government, citizens, and nonprofit and other community organizations that are all working to reduce the amount of gun violence. This data can help us reduce it even further. The dashboard offers real-time, comprehensive information related to gun violence in our city. For example, the dashboard shows where shots are fired and where homicides and non-fatal shootings have taken place. It also provides block-by-block reports, historical data back to the year 2010, anonymized general information on the victims of gun violence, trend reports, information on and statistics on all LMPD divisions, and more. This is so important. Now, all of this data is reflected in numbers, in line graphs, in pie charts, in trends on the dashboard. We are dealing with these facts and this reality. But while most of the information on the dashboard is numbers and line charts and other statistical information, we must remember that behind all of this data are real people, victims and families of victims, and the realities that all of these individuals deal with after gun violence takes place. I'm proud that in our city this year, shootings are down by approximately 10%. But there is so much more we have to do. This is only a very small start. This city has experienced 140 people being murdered this year. Hundreds more have been the victims of non-fatal shootings. This is simply far too much. And so is our hope, our belief, that the information that we are transparently providing in real time on the Louisville Gun Violence Dashboard can lead to action, can help us reduce the amount of gun violence that is plaguing our city. Again, the point of this is that this information will lead to action. Action that we can take together, collaborate on to reduce the amount of gun violence. I'm deeply grateful to Everytown for their support and their advocacy for meaningful solutions to make our city and every city safer. This is an important national organization that has helped us right here in Louisville. I want to say a special thanks to Kate Duda from Everytown, who was unable to be with us here today because of a family emergency. We thank Kate and we thank all of her colleagues at Everytown for helping to make this a reality. I'm proud to say that Louisville was one of only 3 cities chosen by Everytown as a grant recipient to help bring the Louisville Gun Violence Dashboard to life. Again, we are focused on taking this information and turning it into action. So now, to talk a little bit more about the dashboard and how this project came together, I'd like to introduce Paul Kalan, our Director of the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. Paul?
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to everybody. In early 2022, Louisville Metro government began a conversation with representatives from the Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund about the benefits of a data-driven approach when seeking solutions to gun violence. That conversation led to an innovative partnership. It's in September 2022, the city hired Dr. Ivan Benitez as a full-time gun violence data fellow dedicated to collecting, organizing, analyzing, and interpreting a variety of information related to gun violence in Louisville that would assist in the creation of a strategic framework for gun violence reduction, guiding both policy and strategy development. Funding for the 2-year position was provided through a grant from Everytown in combination with American Rescue Plan funds that were allocated to the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods by the Louisville Metro Council. For maximum effectiveness, this position is currently housed within the Louisville Metro Police Department. An initial primary emphasis was placed on developing a public-facing gun violence tracking application or system that could be utilized to enhance city efforts to address gun violence. A gun violence data tracking system is the foundation for a data-driven gun violence prevention strategy. Louisville's interactive gun violence dashboard uses data that originates from LMPD's current records management system and presents it in a user-friendly format. The dashboard is updated daily, providing users with real-time information regarding the dates, times, and locations of criminal homicides and shootings, configured in a manner that protects the privacy of those directly impacted by gun violence. The dashboard includes information on year-to-date trends, victim demographics, and mapping visuals that use neighborhood, council districts, zip codes, and police districts, giving a broad understanding of where gun violence is occurring within our city. The dashboard promotes co-ownership of gun violence reduction by providing our community partners with a critical tool that can be utilized for strategy development, for equitable deployment of resources, and for ensuring transparency and accountability within our collective efforts. For example, our community violence intervention partners can use the information to determine the most effective and efficient staffing patterns when implementing violence interruption strategies. Private and public funders can determine if submitted proposals seek to serve those locations which have the greatest need. Similarly, community outreach organizations will have instant access to the data they need to support their proposals for grant funding. And an ongoing trend analysis can be utilized to determine the effectiveness of collective efforts in smaller geographical areas and allow for timely alterations rather than waiting to the end of a project period for a final evaluation report. Our office is committed to continue working with our city and community partners on how to best utilize all available information related to gun violence in our city, to include but not limited to data from the public health and criminal justice fields, to ensure that Louisville is a safe and healthy city for all. I want to thank all of our partners who work every day to make our communities safer. I want to thank LMPD and the Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund for their partnership on this project. The Everytown Fund is the education and research arm of the Everytown for Gun Safety, the largest gun violence prevention organization in the country. They could not be present, as the mayor stated, they could not be present today, but asked me to present the following statement. Collecting and publishing data is absolutely critical to understanding how gun violence is uniquely impacting our communities and to seeking the solutions that can save lives. Everytown is proud to make this investment in the city of Louisville, and we look forward to partnering with Mayor Greenberg to make Louisville a blueprint for how cities across the country can better use data in the fight to end gun violence in their cities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. As Paul mentioned, this also has been a close collaboration with LMPD as well. I want to thank our chief, Jackie Gwynn-Villarreal, Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey, and Lieutenant Colonel Emily McKinley, who's here with us today of LMPD, that have helped work to make this a reality and to help talk a little bit about what this information means to our police officers and how they can use it as we move forward as well. Lieutenant Colonel?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Paul. Good morning. Again, my name is Emily McKinley. I'm the Assistant Chief over the Accountability and Improvement Bureau with LMPD. Transparency and communication are key components to any successful relationship, and this fact is never more evident in the relationship between city governments and the communities they serve. Collaboration of diverse minds along with evidence-based solutions are paramount to solving complex problems within communities. And violent crime is one of the most complex problems that we face here in Louisville. Over the past decade, trends in violent crime throughout the United States have increased, especially in urban and metropolitan cities. And as we know, Louisville is no stranger to this increase in violent crime, specifically in homicides and shootings. This year, as the mayor explained, we've experienced 140 homicides. And that's an 84% increase from just 5 years ago, when we were at 76 homicides in 2018 this time that year. We need robust solutions to gun violence. We need them now, and we need everyone's help. With the partnership of Ocean, LMPD, and the Everytown USA grant, the Louisville community now has an innovative and advanced dashboard to develop database solutions by tracking and enhancing awareness of gun violence within our community. Solutions to reducing these senseless and heartbreaking incidents are multifaceted, as we all know, and they are solutions that are requiring of city leaders, community members, grassroots advocates, legislators, and members of our judicial system to collaborate and work together to increase public safety and save lives. Thanks to this robust dashboard, which was brilliantly created by Dr. Ivan Benitez, our community has accurate and consistent data at their fingertips. This provides real-time information of trends and mapping to direct resources and solutions for a safer and more connected Louisville. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, we'd like to provide a brief tour of the site and a demonstration of what it offers. So Dr. Benitez, who is, as was mentioned, an Everytown Fellow with a PhD in criminal justice from the University of Louisville, and has been a project manager at the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. He's been doing a ton of research. He's compiled this data. He's put it together in this format, and so he is going to help lead us through. Are you going to talk it through and he's going to show it? Or? Oh, he's got a mic. Perfect.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Emily. And thank you, Paul. I'm going to start by giving a quick demonstration of the Louisville Metro Gun Violence Dashboard. So first, we'll start off with the the homepage, which is just illustrating what our purpose is for having this dashboard, where the data comes from, the definitions, as well as disclaimers. Moving into our year-to-date page, this allows us to look at year-to-date trends when comparing it to previous years. So one thing that I want to start by saying is that it's imperative to use the filters that are listed above when looking at any specific pages on the dashboard. Without using these filters, the data can be a little bit overwhelming and maybe a bit more difficult to interpret. So what I'll do for this example is just reflect data from 2022 and 2023. So starting off with the line graph here, we can see the number of homicides followed by month over month relative to the last year. This allows us to look at what the data looks like relative to the previous year as far as months go. So for example, if we were looking at January, we can see that we were up 3 homicides in January alone. And the same can be done for the following months. Before moving on to non-fatal shootings, I'd like to present the table that looks at the historical trends. So as Lieutenant Emily Kearns had mentioned, we are currently sitting at 140 homicides, and that's a 0% change from year to date from last year, right? One good thing about this is that it also lists the number of incidents relative to the number of homicides that have occurred, right? So as we've had conversations in the past, if we are at least able to lower the number of incidents, then that also allows us to lower the number of homicides. Looking at non-fatal shootings, just to give a quick cap on what we're looking like year to date. So we are about a 10% drop, but the good thing about it is, as I was showing with the homicides demonstration, is that for most of the months we've been down month over month from the last year. And you can see this, the 373 non-fatal shooting victims versus 415 as of last year. And then going back to the incidents, right? So as of now, we are sitting at 320 non-fatal shooting incidents versus 346 last year. So about a almost 8% drop in incidents and a 10% drop in non-fatal shooting victims. As I was saying about the filters and how important they are, if we're looking specifically at 2023 and looking at non-fatals alone, we can see this heat map on the bottom where it gives us a table that's crime of the time by date. And so the darker the shaded box is in red, the more incidents have happened in that particular time and date, right? So we can see that for the most part, most shootings happen after roughly 5 or 6 o'clock, right? We can see it as the night progresses, we can see more shooting incidents occur, right? Specifically on a Saturday around 2200. The filters can also be used to look at non-fatal shootings or homicides, per se, in specific neighborhoods. So, for example, if we were looking at, this one that came up, Smoketown, for example, it looks a little bit, it may be a little hard to interpret, but what this is telling us right now is that in February, April, and in June, and also in July, there was one non-fatal shooting incident for those following months, right? And so, as many of you all have heard, that this dashboard tells us the most frequent time and day of the week in which shooting happens. So we can look at the citywide, but we can also break it down to the city level. So in Smoketown, for example, we can see that, thank goodness that there have not been many non-fatal shooting incidents, right? But we can see that it's roughly on these time of days and these days of the week that we see more non-fatal shootings. And this is more looking at it citywide. So if without using the filters, it's looking at citywide. But when using the filters, you're focusing in on specific areas of the city. Going to the next page, the historic data, it's very similar to the previous page on the year to date. The only difference is that it covers years entirely. So for example, it will not cover 2023 until January 1st because we are still moving into the year of 2023. This allows us to compare year-to-date trends from previous years, and it also allows us to have a better understanding of what gun violence would look like relative to the remainder of the year. So for example, if we were looking at non-fatal shootings in November alone, as of last year, there were 30 non-fatal shootings, right? If we went back to the year-to-date page and looked at non-fatal shootings in 2023, we are sitting at 26. So from here to the remaining few days left in November, if we end with fewer than 30, then we will have had a decrease in the month of November alone. This gives us a better understanding looking at it month over month, right? The same can be done for all of the data. We can look at homicides from last year, and as many of you have heard, the data goes back to 2010. So you can look at specific years and look at the time and dates in which homicides or non-fatal shootings occurred based on time and date. Going to the demographics page, we're able to look at the victim's race, sex, and age group. As the mayor had mentioned, this is a way for us to present the data accurately but also anonymize it. So for example, when looking at, let's say, non-fatal shootings, for example, we can easily say and see that 76% of the victims are black males, are black, 77% are males, and then roughly 32% are between the ages of 18 and 24. So this gives us an understanding of who's specifically being victimized when it comes to gun violence. We can do the same thing for non-fatals, right? However, when looking at the age groups for homicide victims, it's varied slightly more than it has in the past. The same can be done with those filters in the previous pages. We can look at victims of gun violence based on neighborhood, right? So for example, if we were looking at non-fatal shootings of victims in California, we can see that all of them were black, 63% were male, and then roughly 28% of them were 18 to 24-year-olds. The same can be done for any other neighborhood that has had a victimization in that neighborhood. Going to the neighborhoods page, and again, I strongly emphasize the importance of looking at using the filters. So for example, without using the filters, we would see that there's a tremendous increase in the number of count of crime relative to the years before. However, when we're looking more closely, right, it starts cleaning up the percentages and it starts looking at it more closely. So, right, going back to the 140, right, a 0% change versus the non-fatals going back to 373, a 10% drop. But we can also look at it, the number of victimizations and the specific areas in which they have happened. So for example, since I used Smoketown earlier as an example, looking at non-fatal shootings, this is the incident or the locations in which non-fatal shootings occurred in Smoketown, right? But we can see that that's a 60% drop in non-fatal shootings alone in Smoketown, in the neighborhood Smoketown, right? However, when looking at the number of homicides, we can look at the locations in which they happened in Smoketown, but we are up, and bear in mind that when interpreting statistics, the numbers can seem overwhelming, but when looking at the raw numbers, it's more understandable, right? A 200% increase in Smoketown and homicides is just a three victimizations versus one the year before, year to date. The remainder pages are near identical to the neighborhoods page. However, as they had mentioned, the leadership had mentioned, this is just a different visualization. So this just covers council districts. The following page covers zip codes, and the last page covers police divisions. The data is the same. It's just a different visualization in which we can see where homicides and non-fatals are happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Benitez. Kevin, you want to grab the lights? Thank you all very much. Just in conclusion, before we open it up to a few questions from the media, we are, as you can tell, this dashboard is focused on transparency. This is focused on providing information. This is not information that we're proud of. This is not information that we're happy about, but this is the reality. This is the reality, particularly for those neighborhoods on that map that have a concentration of the gun violence that is plaguing our city. And so our point in releasing this Louisville gun violence dashboard is that let us use the information that this provides. Let us use the reality of this gun violence to take action, to do everything we can, working with partners like Reverend Elliott, working with Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, LMPD, other community organizations, to make our city safer, to end this gun violence epidemic that is plaguing our city. Thank you all very much. Thanks to everyone who helped make this dashboard happen, and happy to take a few questions from the media.
Can you provide an example of maybe one way you can take this data and turn it into substantial change, whether it's with the Office for Safety and Health?
Sure. Yeah, a couple of different ways. One, based on what Dr. Benitez was just providing, you can see that much of the gun violence in our city is concentrated in certain neighborhoods. And so those are areas where LMPD needs to focus on prevention, where LMPD can also focus resources on working with the neighborhoods as we continue to build even more trust to get information on solving the homicides and other non-fatal shootings that occur, and that Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods can be focused on with other community partners as well. And then also when you look at that age situation, for example, we are losing far too many people in our community who are young. And so what can we do to help young people, one, not turn to a life of crime so that they decide to pull a trigger, and two, not be a victim of a shooting as well? And those are all things that Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods is focused on. That's why we are so committed to investing a record amount of money into parks, libraries, community centers, and other organizations that give our youth and young adult opportunities to have other experiences outside of school. whether it's athletic programmings, extracurricular programmings, cultural programmings, more academic programming. The more that kids have opportunities to do things and expand their horizons, the less likely they are to find belonging with a group of people who are not doing good things. Yeah.
Has LMPD already been using this information, like you mentioned, in putting resources in those neighborhoods to better respond, or is this today?
So the question was, has LMPD already been using this information to place resources in particular areas where we're seeing spikes in violence? Yes. So we at LMPD have weekly meetings to discuss violent crime and stats and where we're seeing trends. And so we do deploy resources based on that. But now the community has that information as well. So now the community can help us. They can understand where and why officers are in certain neighborhoods and why, why we might be going door to door asking questions and things like that. And so now the community has that information that we've had, and they have it at their fingertips.
There's a lot of information included in this dashboard. Anything that's intentionally being left off? I know we spoke about the information being not but is there anything else being?
Dr. Ivan Benitez might be able to answer that better.
Hello. Yeah, just to answer your question, so no. What is included in this dashboard, it consists of criminal shootings and homicides, right? So at the end of the year, or say later in February, if any homicides are declared, non-criminal or declared justifiable, those are not accounted for in the dashboard. But what is considered in, or what is included in here is all criminal shootings and homicides. So to answer your question, no, we are being completely transparent with what happens on a day-to-day basis within Louisville, Jefferson County.
And just to reiterate also, behind every one of these dots, behind every one of these numbers and graphs on the page is a real person, is a real story, is a real family that's been negatively impacted by gun violence.
Yes, the answer to that question is it has been. Using a data-driven approach is not a new concept, as the question was. The police departments have been doing that for a long time. What makes this approach a little bit unique is it takes all of that data and puts it in a very user-friendly format that our partners in the community can actually use. And, LMPD data has been available to the community in the past, but almost you need a PhD to really understand how to sort through that aggregate data. What this dashboard does, it allows it to be easily accessed by the average person in the community that wants to get involved and understand gun violence. Our project is part of a larger initiative sponsored through Everytown USA, which multiple cities around the country are moving to this format. It ensures that we're using maximum resources and ensuring that we have a trust with the partnership with our community as far as transparency and accountability. If we're going to ask them to partner with us, then we need to give them the tools necessary to do the job. That includes funding and access to the information where they can, deploy their resources and do the best work that they can.
To a degree, LMPD's already known where some of these problem areas have been. How is this any different than the information that they already had?
So the question is, how is this any different from the information that we already have? Yes, as I discussed before, we discuss trends and where crime is occurring on a regular basis. Now the community has that information as well. And so hopefully this dashboard will allow the community to understand department strategies, police department strategies, why resources are deployed in certain ways. And then also, so the community knows where to provide resources. And so that it's a collaborative effort now. So we're asking the community to help in those strategies now.
Let me just say one final thing on that, is that information here is critically important. It's important that the citizens of Louisville have this information, and we want to encourage, as Paul was just talking about, other cities are doing this as well. All cities, all parts of the country should as well. We need this data to be in front of people, to be on top of people's minds. As I mentioned earlier, we need change at the state and federal level. We need help from our state and federal partners to pass legislation that can help us here in Louisville reduce the amount of gun violence. And until people are talking about the tragedies of gun violence every day, particularly concentrated in neighborhoods of poverty, neighborhoods that are primarily black people living, we're not going to get change, and we need change. And this data can help advocate for change. We see the stories on the news, whether it's an individual homicide or a mass shooting. People then move on to the next news story. This data needs to be top of mind for people so that our city, our state, our country takes action to make Louisville and all cities safer, to make our country a safer place that's free of gun violence. Thank you all very much.